we have Shabbat, but we might not be familiar with all the reasons for Shabbat and we discussed last time. We were discussing, some of the traditions, right, of Shabbat and why we do them. And I thought this time we would discuss a little bit more about what is Shabbat and why do we observe Shabbat? Why, it sounds nice, day of rest, it's always that's the way it's but what exactly does it mean to us? At first I thought I'd open up the floor a little bit. What do you think, everybody? Before we get into, I have a number of ideas just I want to present with everyone. And, it's food for thought for everyone. I think it'll give a much deeper meaning to the day of Shabbat, and a much deeper meaning to why we observe Shabbat, and why we celebrate Shabbat. There's tremendous power in the whole day of Shabbat. It's a 25-hour time period, right? Not just 24 hours. Actually, it goes into them from the evening to the night, and there's a lot to it. And so first I thought, what is, and again, nobody should feel nobody's on the spot over here. I just want to, throw out some idea. What does Shabbat mean to everyone? Any thoughts?
Time for introspection.
Okay, time for introspection. That's true. That's a very good point. Very important point. Why? Because normally during the week, what's going on, Doug?
A lot.
Right.
I guess each person can say for themselves their own. Right? It's busy, right? I mean, to say the least, right? We're busy. We're this. We're that. It's a time for introspection. It's a very important
time
point.
for family to come together.
Okay, very important part, right?
Have a meal together.
Oh, well, what happens during the week? Let's go on the other side. Or should I ask? Or should I not ask?
Everybody's got their own schedule.
Everyone's busy, right?
As the kids get older and they've got their things going on. And
got their thing.
Sometimes we don't even see them.
I hear you. We do. Okay, so that's interesting. If you ever speak to people who are not, people don't have this, the opportunity of Shabbat. You ever speak to them, they say, look, life is like, it's endless, right? It's like, those people who are the die-hard workers, they put in hours, and I speak to people all the time, and I hear from this, they're working so and so many hours a week, and I never see their family, or who knows when they're going through crazy, and if you didn't have Shabbos, you didn't have Shabbat, so what would it be? It would just keep going, right? Meaning, what's the difference between, right, Friday, Saturday, they're in the office the whole time, try to call them, it's the weekend, why don't you come join it? Nah, it doesn't matter, there's no stopping.
Right.
However, Shabbat is like this brick wall, right? It's like there's no, right? There's no, we'll make some except. No, it's Shabbat, and you hear these stories about the people, they're running through who knows where, going through, and then Shabbat comes, boom. Right. It's a brick wall, right? Work's done, and everything else stops. It's like you've entered almost into like this new world for the next 25 hours, which is pretty cool, and we'll discuss why there's a pretty neat new world, but it's like we're working crazy hours, isn't that? And suddenly, boom. And let's try to, we put the title, which is a taste of paradise, Shabbat. And what do you think of, when you think of paradise, right? What is, I guess everyone has their own thoughts of what paradise, but, what are some of the...
Calm. Happy.
Calm, right? Very good. Relaxed. Oh, this is the life, Can't get better than that, right? I guess living in San Diego is not so simple for us to imagine because we say this is right.
We wonder where to go on vacation.
Right. I was thinking to myself, I was thinking to myself, all right, I gave, if I'm giving this class in, somewhere on the East Coast where it's freezing cold at one point, it's paradise. Well, I guess, a place with some nice sun and relaxing, right. But we are spoiled, 100%. But anyway, we have to enjoy the beauty. We'll take the beauty that Hashem gives us, right? But, right, it's this beautiful, relaxing place. It's all wonderful, right? And Shabbat really is known as Me'ein Olam Haba, that it's a piece, a little part of Olam Haba, of the world to come. And so it's a taste of paradise, as we mentioned. There's something about it that's like, and if you've ever spoken to people, you'll ask people, like, what, and people will say to themselves, there's something there, I can't put my hands on it exactly. And we'll discuss why we can't put our hands on it exactly, but you can't put your hand, there's something there that's really, really special. And so I want to just begin with, it's interesting because there's a prayer, it's part of Psalms, part of Tehillim, which is Psalms that we say every day of the week. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and it's always described as today is the first day. We say Yom Rishon LeShabbat, the first day of the week, right? Towards Shabbat. And then suddenly, next day is the second day towards Shabbat. Next day is the third day towards Shabbat. It's interesting that, right, it's not like today is Monday, today's Sunday, today's Tuesday. Every day is a day, the first day towards Shabbat, because we're always looking and anticipating. Everything is getting towards that day of Shabbat. And suddenly then you finish Shabbat, suddenly you start Sunday, you would think to yourself, all right, we're done, you know what I mean? Or we're finished, now it's Sunday. No, today's the first day. It's called Yom Rishon Shabbat, the first day towards Shabbat again, because we're always looking towards Shabbat. You know, the rabbis teach us a story of this person, right? They would buy a special thing. They'd be in the marketplace and they buy a special thing. We say there's a concept called L'Kavod Shabbos Kodesh, for the honor of Shabbat Kodesh, because all the things that we do should be for the honor of the holy Shabbat. So we buy special things. That's why we have special meals and special foods. So man, they're in the store and it was Sunday and they saw something special. They said, I want to get it for my family for Shabbat. So they said, this is going to be L'Kavod Shabbos Kodesh, for the honor of the holy Shabbos. And suddenly then the next day they come to the store and they found something even better. So what do? The other thing, I believe that they ate that other thing, and then this next thing, this is going to be for Shabbos Kodesh. And the next day, and it kept going on. Why? Because every day, if you find something more special, we're going to keep it for Shabbos, because Shabbos is very, very special and has that special, point about it, And, it's interesting. They say that people who have, I guess you call it, been accustomed to celebrating Shabbos all the time, and like celebrating all the different parts of the Shabbos, they'll tell you that Shabbos is one of the greatest sources of inspiration. 100%. You say, like, what is it that, like, Shabbos is unbelievable. It's just amazing. The family, the time for introspection, that idea that people who are used to, so to say, it's one of the most greatest times of a source of inspiration. And I guess you call it paradoxically, sometimes Shabbos can be like the greatest hurdle for, if people aren't necessarily so used to celebrating Shabbos and being involved in Shabbos, it would be the greatest hurdle to overcome, because there's a lot involved in Shabbos, but yet Shabbos has like so much to offer. It's interesting because the Torah says two different things about there are two commandments, in the Torah all about Shabbat. So one idea, it says, is that 6 days a person is going to work, and the seventh day we say is we say that 6 days an individual is going to work, and on the seventh day it's going to be a day that we're not going to do any malacha, which is called any work. And suddenly then there's a second commandment in the Torah, which is this positive commandment, which says that on the seventh day you shall rest. Now, it's a little funny, right? Because if you're not going to do any work, right? The Torah doesn't say any extra ideas. If you're not going to do any work, so aren't you obviously going to rest? Isn't that kind of obvious, right? If you're not doing any work, presumably what are you doing? You're resting, right? So why does the Torah need to give this second commandment, one might say, of specifically you shall rest? It's an obvious, very good meaning to say that it's not an obvious. Sometimes we think to ourselves, if we're not doing any work, then obviously, right, that's like an automatic result. We're resting.
We're resting, but in fact you may not be.
You may not be. It's not so true.
It's like
meaning.
You need to put yourself into a different environment.
Into, as we were saying, that brick wall, when Shabbos comes, it's a different. When we're thinking of rest, right? Sometimes what do we think? Right? Sip your cocktails, right? Sitting by the pool, chilling out, right? That's not, yes, of course we're supposed to have our physical, and we actually say that Shabbos is the time we say Chatzi Lachem and V'Chatzi Lashem, which means half for you and half for God. Very interesting, right? You make a deal with God almost. But Shabbos is the time that we have meaning we're supposed to, of course, have physical rest as well. Right? We've been working hard, taking rest, right? As we call it a Shabbos shluff, right? A little Shabbat nap or a Shabbat, right? But it's also the time for half for God, that we're involved in prayers, we're involved in learning, we're involved, as Doug was saying, introspection. We're involved, right? That is all part of the Shabbat experience. And the idea is that, again, it's not an automatic, by not doing work, you're automatically rest. It's not true. We have to put yourself in this mode of rest. And we're going to discuss what this, mode of rest, really, what this mode of rest is. And I guess a nice way to put it is that, imagine if a person, you're in a room, and with somebody who says the following, he said, I want to be able to tell, if it's light or dark in the room. So, how should I do it? The person asks. So what do you say? What's a good way to tell if it's light or dark?
Open your eyes.
Open your eyes, right? So take a look, right? Open your eyes and you'll see. So he says, no. Anyone could do that. That's not. I want to be able then to smell the difference between light and dark. So what would you say? The person will say, you can't smell the difference, right? Okay, fine. Okay, I want to be able to taste the difference between light and dark. Sorry, you can't do that either. There's only one way this is going to work. Open your eyes and you'll see the difference, right?
Right.
So that's actually an exact comparison. And that's really the problem, in a way, with Shabbat. What do I mean by the problem? That we're used to everything being in the physical, in the physical sense, right? So we're assuming, as you were saying, Seema, before, right? That if I can't touch it, right? If I can't feel it, if I can't smell it, now obviously the yummy food, right? We could smell that, right? And the taste we could take. But there's something that, I guess a good way to call it is your sixth sense, right? We have our five senses, right? But there's the sixth sense, and that is the sense of a person's spirituality. And it's beyond the realm of physical, and it's not something that we can necessarily feel like that, but it's something that we can feel inside of ourselves. Right, and it's correct, and it's our spirit. It's what's called our neshama, right? Our spirituality, our neshama, our soul that we have, and that that connects very much. It connects its godliness, and it connects with Hashem. It connects with God. It connects with the Shabbat very much, with the whole experience. And we're actually told that on Shabbat, very interesting, that we get what's called an additional neshama, an additional soul a person gets on Shabbat. Every person has one soul. Additional, a second neshama yateru, which means an additional soul a person gets. What that exactly means, I'm a rabbi more when it comes to the. Some of these concepts, what exactly it means. If we say that a person gets a neshama every Shabbos, when Shabbos begins, we are given a neshama yateru, which means an additional soul.
I think that we get a second neshama. I think that our soul becomes more profound or more aware or more, so it's like we're like two neshamas.
But also, the result is you have more in you. It's an additional, they call it an additional soul. However, this is just as an aside, actually. I just saw this actually recently. And so what do we say? When we say the Shalom Aleichem, what are we doing? We're saying, we're welcoming the guests. Who are we welcoming? Those angels, right, who came back from shul with us, right? So it's interesting because one of the verses of the Shalom Aleichem, the last verse is Seitz Cham L'Shalom, meaning they came and now we wish them they should go. Doesn't sound so nice, right? They just came into our house, right? How often, right, you have a guest comes in and you sing 4 verses to them and then,
Before dinner.
I guess maybe, I don't know, it didn't work out so well,
Does that link to it's supposed to be when you're coming back from shul, you have two angels?
Two angels who accompany us with us, and they see if the house is all clean and ready. So I saw actually just last week actually an interesting idea. They say that some of these angels who were coming, it was actually almost like a different set who were coming with the person's neshama yatera, this additional, and they give it over to us in a way, and now we're then having them. Again, these are highfalutin. I don't know exactly. So we'll try to keep to. But this is just an interesting idea that I saw last week. Actually, an interesting idea. They say that some of these angels who were coming, it was actually almost like a different set who were coming with the person's neshama yatera, this additional, and they give it over to us in a way, and now we're then having them. Again, these are highfalutin. I don't know exactly. So we'll try to keep to. But this is just an interesting idea that I saw. As to why we would
like bring holiness to Shabbat,
right.
Bring holiness to your house, bring more heightened.
Correct.
Holiness.
Bring definitely a heightened right, a heightened holiness. It's actually interesting because now let's get into what Shabbos represents. You know, what exactly what's the point of Shabbos? Okay, we say God rested. What does it mean he rested? He's the Almighty, right? As we say it, right? God doesn't need to rest, right? And we'll get to that soon, right? What does this mean? God's not. And so, what is the point of Shabbat? One of actually the prayers that we say on Friday night. It's known as a prayer of Vaychulu Hashamayim Va'aretz, which says that the heavens were completed, right? What happened? 6 days God was working to create the world, and the seventh day, then everything was completed, and then God rested. So in a way, the Talmud actually points this out, that the observance of Shabbat is actually what's called edut, which is testimony to the fact that God created this world. Meaning to say, God created the world. Now, did God create the world and say, created this world, made a nice world, and now let's have it, hopefully it'll just work on its own, and everything will, be all hunky-dory and all, and he's not involved anymore? No, right? God is constantly involved in running the world and in the runnings of every daily, aspect of the world. And we remember that on Shabbos. It's one of the things that we say, the testimony on Shabbos, we remember that, and we say that God, this allows us in a way, it's actually a nice, a good reminder to say that it's a time that, like a time of reflection almost, that we stop and we say, God created the world, and the world continues to go with God's running of the world, with God's being involved with the world. And it's an important thing for us all to remember, because sometimes we lose focus. We think, okay, great world that God created, and now it's kind of, it's me. I'm running things, or this person's running things, and especially, where things are going well in our lives. It's a concept actually the Torah brings down often. Where things are going very well in our lives, we say, it's me who's doing it, right? I'm the one, right? I'm making this happen, right? And we tend to forget God at those points, right? It's only when things, I guess, are difficult. It's interesting. I mean, there's definitely a heightened more awareness, the Shabbat for a time period for that. But again, we should realize really that God is, of course, available all the time and with us all the time, and we need to make that, a part of our lives all the time. But yes, definitely Shabbat has, that idea. It's an interesting point, I guess, to say the following, that I guess we'll put it like this. Imagine the following analogy: Rockefeller Center. So, who's been to Rockefeller Center? I'm sure you've been, Jane, right? Right, you've been to Rockefeller Center, right? Aubrey? Yeah, anyone? No? Yeah. Okay. So in New York, okay. So it was, originally it was owned, by Rockefeller, the Rockefeller family. And it was open to, pedestrian traffic. You'll be walking around, it's a beautiful place. It really is very gorgeous. You walk on in there and you have a good... And an interesting thing, I never knew this myself, actually, until I read this whole article, that apparently the law requires that one day a year, it has to be closed. Rockefeller Center has to be closed. Why?
Maintenance.
So it seems that it has to be closed for its one to show that it's privately owned, meaning to show that it's not a public thing. It was actually owned by Rockefeller, and they owned. This was their. And what's the idea behind it? It's interesting. I mean, what does that show? Otherwise, people would assume this is obviously, this public, public spot, public. No, one day a year. This is no. You should realize this is privately owned.
1 day a year.
1 day a year, they would, I guess, shut it down. This is what I read in a spot. I'm taking their word for it that this is the truth. What's the connection? The connection is to Shabbos itself. Why? Because similarly, we really make that statement about Shabbos itself. Because normally what happens, really, in terms of God's ownership of the world itself, that throughout. If we wouldn't have this moment of Shabbos to stop for a minute, when in a way close down shop, in a way, and say to realize that this is something that belongs, that Hashem, God is the one who is running the world. God is the one, and even though at times we say, things are going really well, we think to ourselves, of course, it really is. We have to realize that don't forget that God is the one who is, who is running things, and God is the one who is, who created this world. And it's an important concept for us all to realize. There's another very important idea, and that is the connection with Egypt. And you might say it's a little funny, right? What's the connection with with Egypt? To make sure we all right. That's beautiful, right?
Very much.
Right? If we think about it, meaning if I would ask you, are we slaves? So what do you think? Are we slaves?
Yes.
Well, we're not like the slaves of Egypt,
No,
thank
like-
goodness.
To our
But
work,
are we
to our-
slaves?
Yeah,
Sure.
kids.
Yeah, sure we are.
I don't know about you, but I constantly, thank goodness I try very hard not to be one of those people, but when I see people walking around, like this all the time, you know what I mean, and they don't even communicate with
Right.
people anymore. They don't even write. The concept of communication is like out the, and where people can't even survive, and interesting, sometimes when you hear, someone came over to me just in, to say like, oh, I don't know, this person might have lost a certain cell phone or who knows what, then they won't, it's like, if you think to yourself, what are we going to do if I don't have this? Or what am I going to do if I don't, I'm lost, it's kind of sad, right? It's kind of interesting what people say, right? If they don't have their GPS, they're like finished, right? What happened to the old day, right? I mean, again, not to say it's not helpful, I agree it is helpful, but these types of we have to realize that's what Egypt was. Egypt was slavery, but it's not just the physical slavery of working like this. It's this, are we slaves to ourselves? Meaning, are we free of this concept of being responsible to our work, being responsible to this? Are we totally free in that sense? Are we free to our to jealousy? Are we free to arrogance? Are we free to all these bad character traits that have become like a part of us? So really the idea is, are we in control of ourselves? And if we're not in control of ourselves,
Truly free.
right, so we're not really truly free. And a person needs, Shabbos is really that time period for a person to reflect on this. As Doug was saying, that idea of introspection. Introspection means a lot of things, right? I mean, it means introspection for our Judaism, right? For our Torah, where we're holding an introspection for ourselves, for our family, for our spouse, for our children, for this. But introspection also, when we talk about ourselves, where, how are we doing in our midot and our character traits? Are we becoming better people, Or did I become, kind of arrogant this week, Maybe I can work on myself, maybe I wasn't so respectful this week. Maybe, I kind of got pretty jealous of my neighbor who got a brand new who knows what this week, Maybe I should work on myself, realize everything that comes to me, him is not necessarily supposed to come to me. Obviously, we're different people, right? Meaning these types of ideas, we need to, that's part of the introspection as well, to think about things and think about life and think about, where, and that's why Egypt is put together with Shabbos and that concept that Shabbos is that time period to realize that we are free.
Coming out.
And it's a time period when we take that cell phone and literally turn it off. You know what I mean? When we take that so-and-so and say, no more iPhone for this, you know what I mean? And no more this, no more that. It makes it that I'm not connected to anyone. Nobody, right? They can't reach me in the office, right? They're going to try to get in touch with me. I'm sorry, I'm not available, right? I'm out, right? And they're going to try to this or who knows what. Why? Because I'm totally in this kind of new bubble, this new world for the next 25 hours. And it's a beautiful world because it's a spiritual world. It's a world with my family. It's a world with God. It's a world with connecting, a world with growing. And it's a world of tremendous satisfaction. And we'll realize that suddenly then when it comes Saturday night or when it comes Sunday, we'll be like, oh man, I need the next Shabbos today. And that's why, as we started off, what happens? Everything is building up to Shabbos. Sunday is the first day toward Shabbos. Everything is that Shabbos. So that's the idea with with Egypt. It's interesting that that idea of freedom, and that's really the connection. As we were saying, in terms of in terms of Egypt and being free from. It's actually a famous line it's a well-known line that's mentioned in various places, but they say that more than the Jew has kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jew.
Yeah.
And the idea is that Shabbos is what's kept us going as a people. and kept us, again, as we were mentioning before, that idea of in terms of the family, right, in terms of bringing that close bond together, but just in terms of our whole commitment to Torah and our commitment to Judaism, Shabbos is, because as we all said, right, we're all busy, right, everyone's got their own, during the week, you can barely sometimes try to get a hold of this one, busy, and it's like, if not for Shabbos, that opportunity just to like stop for a moment and have that introspection, like you were saying, Doug, you're going to be lost, because it's just going to keep going. We say actually by Egypt as well, when they were in, what happened? The Egyptians, right, Paro, King Pharaoh, he was a very smart guy, a very big psychologist. You know why he was a big psychologist?
Why?
Because, PhD even, right? You know why he was because he would keep the Jews totally busy, right? He wouldn't let them stop for a moment. And why? Because he knew if they're going to make some big board meeting, you know what I mean? A big, who knows what they're all going to get together, it's going to be a huge coup, right? If it's a big coup in town, they're all going to come and massive and uproar, right? Because the bottom line is there were many more Jews and we started flourishing and multiplying, many more Jews than the Egyptians. So we should just overthrow them, right? Get out of here. Like, what are you guys doing? We're gonna. But that didn't happen. Why? Because we were so busy. When a person's like so busy, we all know, right? Those times where you get this thing in work or you get some, and it's like you have a deadline, and you got to hit you can't think of anything else, right? Everything is just, towards that deadline. Your wife calls or something and wants to, or her husband calls, who knows? Listen, we'll talk later. I got to hit the deadline. You can't think about anything else. And if someone tells you, how about you come today? How about a good night tonight maybe for a meeting? Absolutely not. There's nothing to talk about, right? That was exactly what happened. So if we didn't have the Shabbos to stop us and just to we'd be lost in that sense. Anyways, continuing on with just one, a few more thought, but
Well, what about the preparation for Shabbos? I mean, if you're going to do your hair and brush your cut your nails or whatever on a Thursday afternoon, should you leave that till Friday to make it part of the preparation for Shabbos?
oh, so that's there is something called Erev Shabbos, which is officially called the evening of Shabbos. What does that mean? That means starting already like Thursday night. We start preparing, which is, we say there's a concept that Misha Tarach be'erev Shabbat yochel b'Shabbat. The person who works and puts an effort on Erev Shabbat, on this time period before Shabbat, they're going to be the ones who will eat on Shabbat. What does that mean? It means, I guess, no work, no eat. You know what I'm saying? Or no, forget it, just about eat. No, if you don't put in the preparation. So again, preparation is if you'll ask any Jewish housewife, it's not just a Jewish housewife, right? It's everyone. If you ask any mother or any, right, all the kids and the father, everyone's got their own thing. Erev Shabbat is a busy time, right? It's busy, right? You're in the store, you're in this, you're in that, running around. It's not that, people always say, if you come to the house Friday night for a Friday night meal, and you see the house all, lavish and elegant, you say, I wish you would have come, if you would have come Friday afternoon, you would have seen it's not exactly like this, right? Well, it's a little crazier, it's a little busy, but that's all part of the preparation, right? It's all part of the, God says, listen, there's no way to make something beautiful if you don't put in work, right? It's not just, things don't just happen like that. I guess maybe there are some magic situations, but like for the most part, it doesn't happen. And it's interesting because the Talmud actually brings down a whole different slew of stories, and about all these different rabbis who were all themselves involved. Like a person could just say, oh, maybe I should just be like learning the whole time, or who knows what, or I don't know, or somehow, hire the cleaning lady, or I don't know, and it'll just get, and the Talmud brings down each one of these people had their own individual thing. This one would go catch the fish or something like that, and this one, Talmud brings down all these different things that each, why is it's saying that to teach us that each of us have to have our own involvement in Shabbat preparations. So for us to think to ourselves, I'm just going to hire my, pay my cleaning lady or who knows what, or for us to think, let someone else, let, my spouse take care of that, or let the kids, or, again, people have their own schedules. Sometimes you hear people that come home a minute before okay, that's different, but, whether it's Thursday, whether it's something, whatever it is, Why? And why do you think that's so? Why? I mean, it's a nice lesson, but why?
It's a commitment that you make and it's an investment that you put in there.
So, very true, meaning effort creates love, right? It's not just a concept, by the way, in terms of Shabbos. It's a concept, which is a separate topic, but it's a concept for everything, right? A person puts their effort into things. There's a bond. There's a real relationship, right? Right. In terms of marriage, that's one thing, and in terms of many other areas as well, right? If you just sit back and say, oh, it's all good, right? It's all gonna. That's not the way it works. You have to put in that effort. So too when it comes to Shabbos. If you want to appreciate it, if you ask any person, right, when it comes to, it's interesting. I'll tell you an interesting. I don't know. Maybe everyone can share what's your favorite holiday?
That's for me.
That when you put in so much effort into something, and it's with anything, right? You put effort into an investment. You put effort into any. I'm not just saying business, anything, right? It creates that bond. It creates that relationship, and it's the same. You were saying just Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah also is a ton of work, and you appreciate the holiday much more. So too when it comes to Shabbos, if you put in that effort and you can appreciate much more what it has to offer. So I think just getting back, you were saying just in terms of preparations. Again, preparations come at all. I mean, usually Friday is when things are busy with preparations, but like people Thursday evenings also. I'm saying it's all part of the Erev Shabbat. But again, we're waiting for Shabbos as we started off, Sunday and Monday. It's all called Yom Rishon B'Shabbat, the first day toward Shabbat. Everything